This was a good Nintendo Direct. Of everything that got announced, many gamers will be eating good for the next few months. As for me, I saw a few things that got me excited. So excited, in fact, that it pulled me away from my Fatal Fury anthology video. Part 1 coming soon, by the way. I have some ideas for a couple of videos that'll be coming out in the weeks to come, alongside the anthology. So let's get started with this bad boy. Marvel vs. Capcom surprised the hell out of me and made me feel hype that I haven't felt in a good while. These games are way more fun than they had any business being. Capcom and SNK crossing over makes more sense since they both made a bunch of fighting games. It's all well known now, but at the time nobody could fathom the likes of Iron Man duking it out alongside Iron Man all those years ago. But now, nobody blinks an eye. What makes this such a big deal is the fact that most of these games haven't been ported or re-released on modern hardware in several years. You could chalk it all up to licensing, mostly on Marvel's end, as they were the reason why all these games were regulated to Fightcade or MAME. But people let their voices be heard and campaigned like hell to make this a reality. Now we'll all get a chance to play a collection of some of these classic bangers without having to break the bank. Cause if you were thinking of playing all these games on legit hardware, then you'd have to take out a fucking mortgage. Okay, maybe not that much, but all these games cost a serious grip. Consider this thought experiment a PSA for anybody who's ever thought or wanted to play these games without emulation. Get your wallets ready, folks. We'll start things off with The Punisher, since it's the only non-fighting game in this collection. Capcom is right up there with Konami in terms of beat-em-ups. Line up their best stuff next to each other and you'll see what I mean. Punisher is a solid-ass beat-em-up that's got more sauce than you would expect. This bad boy got a port on the Genesis, and as you would expect, it's not on par with the arcade version. Remember that phrase, which is gonna come up a lot. To be fair, this was to be expected. Everybody knew that this wouldn't be exactly like the arcade version. You just had to take what you can get. If you want this port today, expect to pay at least $110 for a loose copy, or $334 if you want all the other good shit to go with it. You could buy a Switch with that kind of money. Punisher is a good ass time and a nice bonus, but now it's time to talk about the actual fighting games.
Optic blast!
X-Men Children of the Atom started all of this. At first glance, it looks like an X-Men fighting game, but if you dig a bit deeper, you'll find this dude chilling out in the roster. Yup, this is the first appearance of a Street Fighter character in a non-Street Fighter fighting game. Akuma's cameo sparked interest in arcades and eventually led to the Versus series we all know and love. That doesn't mean Children of the Atom doesn't stand on its own. It's totally worth playing today, but how much is that gonna cost you? You have three options: the PS1 version, the Saturn version, and the PC version, which I had no idea was a thing until I made this video. Of the three, the Saturn is pretty damn close to the arcade version. The PS1 version is missing some frames and runs slow, and the PC version doesn't fare much better. Here are the loose and complete prices for each. And that's it. It never got ported to anything else for years except for the arcade 1-up machine. The complete prices aren't as bad as the Punisher, so at least there's that. Marvel Superheroes is somewhat of a mystery to me. Unlike everything else here, I have never saw an arcade cab of it or played any of the ports. It's the one that I have the least experience with. I know this game's big gimmick is the Infinity Stone, gem system. This is pre-MCU after all. Anyway, each gem gives you a buff when activated. More speed, more damage, health regen, that sort of thing. Certain gems get extra buffs based on who uses them, like Blackheart getting a little extra from the Reality Stone. I'm getting sidetracked. What does the port situation look like here? We got two, PS1 and Saturn. The PS1 loads faster, but the Saturn version runs smoother and has more animation frames. Once again, it's cheaper than the Punisher both ways across both ports. For a time, you could get a really good port of this in MVC1 in the Origins collection, but that shit got delisted back in 2014. Still, that's much better than half the games in this video. Price-wise, it's pretty positive. Better cherish that feeling though, because things are about to get gradually worse.
Here you go!
X-Men vs. Street Fighter is the first official title in the Versus series. All the hallmarks of the series start here, with screen-filling super moves, aerial raves, tag battles, and assist moves. And it's responsible for one of my favorite images in all of gaming. Fuck man, just look at that shit! I could gush about this game all day, but alas, we're here to talk about ports. Or should I say, port. Because the West only got the PS1 port, which is the most dog shit version of the game imaginable. All the common problems with the other PS1 ports are here, plus the removal of the tag system, because the PS1 hardware couldn't handle that shit. There's a limited version of the tag system you could do via code, but it really wasn't worth it. Now, if you live in Japan, you could get your hands on the Saturn version, which is leaps and bounds better than the PS1 version by itself. But if you add the RAM card to it, that makes that port 100% arcade perfect. Hell, even some versions got packed in with the RAM card. But since we didn't get that, let's take a look at the prices for the PS1 version. I mean, it's cheaper than the Punisher, but the Punisher wasn't missing major features.
Are you ready, true believers? Capcom and Marvel have joined forces once again to bring you it's Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter! Look! Spectacular action! Don't miss out on the enjoyment of a lifetime! Feel sensational thrills! Don't miss the most amazing tag team fighting game ever! Are you ready for a new challenger? History!
Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter doesn't quite resemble what came before it, and it really doesn't feel like everything that came after it. In all honesty, it feels like a remix of the last 3 games stitched together like a homunculus. It's still fun though, so fuck it. Just make sure you play it on anything other than the PS1 version. It's a tiny bit better than X-Men vs. Street Fighter on PS1, as you can have tag matches without using a code, but only works in mirror matches. So yeah, better import that Saturn version. I mean, the prices are comparable to the last game, but it's way too overpriced for what is essentially a gimped port. Can the next game do any better?
Capcom presents
Marvel vs. Capcom! Come on!
Well, yes and no. The PS1 version of MVC is just as compromised as the other PS1 ports, as tag battles are still limited to identical teams. There is a weird zoom in on the air combos for some reason. Sega's still the way to go here, as the Dreamcast port has all the features of the arcade versions. There's still a bit of a slowdown, but it's the closest to arcade perfect as you can get now. MVC Origins is obviously better, but that's dead now, so it doesn't even matter. Obviously, MVC1 is easily overshadowed by its sequel, but in recent years I've come to appreciate the first one more than most. While it doesn't do the kitchen sink approach like MVC2, its smaller roster makes shit more manageable and less chaotic overall. I actually snagged a Dreamcast copy of MVC a couple years back. I think I paid about 70 or 80 bucks on it, complete in box and everything. That was a good ass find. So far, MVC1 seems to be the most reasonable game here price-wise, and I'm using big air quotes. But now it's time for the game everybody cares about the most.
Capcom presents
Ready?
Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes.
MVC2 needs no introduction. You know the character select screen, you know the music, and you know the memes. What you don't know about is the ports. I don't know, dude. You might. MVC2 got ported to the Dreamcast, PS2, and Xbox. There was an HD version on the PS3 and 360, but that died in 2013. Once again, the Sega version is damn near arcade perfect, as MVC2's arcade hardware ran on Sega's Naomi hardware, which is basically what the Dreamcast runs on. The PS2 and Xbox ports are technically functional, but they're far from arcade perfect. The most common complaints are bad frame rates, wonky combos, and some high-level glitches being removed. But since all major tournaments use the glitched version for competitive play, those versions get overlooked. But don't expect that to affect the price in the slightest. MVC2 is damn near legendary in game collecting in terms of pricing. It's a popular game that's highly sought after, especially if you missed out on the HD port, which came out in 2009. So let's see, almost 10 years for the Dreamcast port and about 7 or 8 years for the Xbox and PS2 ports. Which reminds me, hold up. I have a copy of the PS2 version that I got around 2012 or so from GameStop for about 50 bucks. For some reason now, that shit is like 4 times the price, so what the fuck? It's rumored that the PS2 version cost more because Capcom's Marvel license ran out while they were printing the copies. I guess an inferior version is better than nothing? Maybe. I did manage to snag the HD version on 360 though. As you can see, MVC fans had it rough for a while, even before what Infinite did. And things stayed that way until that Nintendo Direct. Yes, there's emulation in Fightcade, but your average fuck casual player isn't gonna go through the trouble of figuring that out, and you need casual players to make a fighting game profitable. You could go the arcade 1-up route and buy their MVC2 cab, which has all these games in it, or you can go with the other one that has the Punisher if you're so inclined. Only issue is that these cabs are kinda big, expensive, and not feasible for most consumers. Basically, all I'm saying here is that we got a chance to get everything we've been asking for in one convenient package, with extras on modern hardware, for a price that'll be much easier to swallow. You wanna know how much each of these games cost all together?
Here comes the money!
Here we go.
Even if the collection comes out to be like 70 bucks or so, which it won't. One is basically the price of a Series X or a PS5 brand new, and the other is like... Do you know how many things you can do with $1,300? It is not even funny. So that's it. That's your PSA. You fuckers better buy this shit because the license will expire and there will be another decade-long drought if we are lucky. It's coming out this year on Steam, Switch, and PS4. The lack of an Xbox and PS5 version might have to do with this shit running on MT Framework, but the PS4 version works on PS5 anyway, so it practically means nothing for Sony folks. That's it. That's the video. Don't really have a joke this time, so I'm just gonna let the character select theme from MVC2 play us out.
To play us out. What does that mean? To play us out. What is... For credit. I don't know what that means, to play us out. What does that mean? To end the show?
Yeah.
All right, go.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with a... I can't do it. We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.